I know you're absolutely clear that we need to get more people onto public transport, which mainly means buses, and that's a big challenge for practical, social and financial reasons. In the first place, we need park and ride sites on all arterial roads into the city, making them easily accessible to as many people as possible and minimising the need to travel on the M11 and A14 to reach one. I believe there's a strong case for about 8 or 9 new sites. These will be complemented by a network of cycle and ride hubs in the villages and outskirts of the city, like we have along the guided busway, and bus and cycle hubs within the city. That will take some pressure off roads, but it won't solve the problem. Many people just do not like buses and prefer sitting in their own car in a queue to get into a city centre car park. Also, park and ride sites have been shown to abstract users from regular bus services, making those less financially viable, leading to a reduction in rural services and more people having to drive to park and ride sites. If indeed they have a car, there is a real danger that the poorest living in rural communities will be cut off from the city. So how do we change transport habits? The solution I would like you to consider is known as gating, or queue relocation. Vehicles are held at points outside the city where there is space to increase road capacity. Traffic lights connected to queue detectors in the roads ahead release vehicles only as fast as they can move freely. A bypass lane allows emergency services, buses and maybe other classes of road users to skip the queues. Others can make an informed choice about using park and ride or public transport from home rather than as now chancing it and driving into the city. I've identified a possible 16 locations where roads would need to be gated, mostly close to park and ride sites. These measures, building more park and ride sites and gating, are definitely affordable within the city deal, and there will still be plenty of money left over for improving the road network, creating new rail connections and building world-class infrastructure for cycling and walking. I'm working with a small group of people currently resourced by the cycling campaign to expand on our vision for enabling everyone to use the most convenient and appropriate combination of driving, public transport, cycling and walking to get around Greater Cambridge. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss how we can develop this vision and present it to you for public consultation in the autumn. And I would just draw your attention to the other part of what has been circulated to you, which is a longer version of this speech, which goes into a little bit more detail about the background and arguments for this particular direction that we're suggesting.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the first point is we don't actually have an item on today's agenda on this, but we clearly are planning ahead for a consultation in the autumn. So I'm happy to meet you and discuss what you're proposing and the input that you're getting from others. We, as a board, recognise that one of our objectives is to significantly shift journeys from cars to other routes, particularly the percentage of the journeys that are made in the future needs to be a much higher percentage non-car. And we haven't got any prescription for that at the moment, but we do plan to consult, including the traffic generators, but also a broader consultation in the autumn. And that's the best route to feed into this. I think there is a consensus among us that we do need to invest significantly more in park and rides, and then it's a question of what mix does that include. We also recognise the need to tackle congestion as part of looking at the investments that we're sequentially looking at over the next few months. So unless we address, with whatever solution we come forward with, including considering options, including the gating that you proposed, unless we address that fundamental issue about traffic car numbers, then we're not going to be able to get the benefit from the broader investment that we're planning. So thank you for your input. I'm happy to meet up. There will be the consultation that we've already started outlining and which we'll go forward with in the autumn.
It was quite moving to hear in July the words of support and the unanimous support for the Assembly to recommend to this board that they approve this project at their meeting today. It was also good to see that even the objectors at the Assembly meeting supported the principles of the route. It is understandable that some had concerns over the route and its details, as on the agenda for both the Assembly and this meeting. There is now on the City Deal website a revised proposal of the route with some significant changes. I do hope the board and any objectors have had an opportunity to see that. We all need to work better and communicate better to ensure our main differences are resolved before a more definite route goes to public consultation in the autumn. The completed route should give many who currently drive from, say, Milton to Addenbrooks or tramping to the Science Park a more pleasant and healthy option by cycling and hence reduce congestion within Cambridge. It should also add value to other developments such as the Cambridge North Station. Of course, as a campaigner and a pragmatic idealist at that, I'll always ask for more. So I have two questions. There's a lack of good evidence about the mode changes that occur when good facilities for cycling are constructed. Before and after studies are needed, and not just counts of cycles. Will that happen? And finally, the improved access for both cycling and walking on the east side of the railway would give much added value to an eastern entrance to the main railway station. This was proposed as a means of reducing congestion in the station area in 1950 in the Holford report. Hills Road should have reduced congestion and there will then be added benefits for the Chisholm Trail. Will that happen? I look forward to working towards a successful public consultation in the autumn. And as an addendum, I noticed comments in today's Cambridge News that I'm being accused of being anti-motorist, and not for the first time. One year, whilst in a research arm of DFT, I actually reached the finals of the Civil Service Motorist of the Year. I even kept a little plaque to prove it. I wonder how many other anti-motorists can claim that fame. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Two different questions to the one we were expecting, but
well,
nevertheless ones that we can try and answer. So first of all, what are we thinking of in terms of quantifying the mode changes? So are we planning to do some pre and post impact analysis?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Through you, yes, as a matter of course on major schemes, we would undertake those sorts of studies. So the most recent significant one was the busway, when we looked at both car traffic, cycle and pedestrian movements. We've got cycle counters down on the route itself. So yes, that sort of work would be normal practice. In fact, on the busway we specifically did a piece of work through Atkins to quantify the benefits, and so we would be looking, with whoever we can work with to identify the benefits. So yeah, that's definitely built in. On the second one, as the Chairman said, I wasn't really primed for this question, so I'm not entirely sure actually, Jim, what it is what you're referring to. So
there have been several proposals. They were actually presented to the City Council by Network Rail in 2010 or 11 to have an access for at least cycling and walking from the east side, basically an extension to the existing overbridge with a modular entrance on the eastern side, so that people don't have to come all the way around to get access to the station. I don't think anybody would expect it to be open the same hours as the existing entrance, but it would be an easy way of reducing the congestion at the main entrance.
Okay, and I suspected that's what you were, again, Chairman, through you, that what you were talking about, but I just wanted to be clear. I mean, I think there are broader issues that need to be considered, because I was certainly aware of that work, not least of all working with the train operating companies and Network Rail, and land issues in that area. But I mean, it's certainly something that I'm sure, whether it be through the City Deal Board or individually the councils, will continue to look at with Network Rail, because I mean, it clearly has the potential for significant benefits. So I think probably it's more difficult to say in relation to your question, yes, that will definitely happen, as I put in the first one, but it's certainly something that's been on, as you say, the agenda for a long time and would have benefits.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Yeah, and as the councillor for that area at the end of the trail, there clearly are issues at both ends. I mean, it is enough for us to consider the proposal for the trail, but there are clearly consequential issues at both ends about how the trail and the cycling linkages fit into the routes that people want to follow. For instance, the trail at the end links into the long cycleway that's parallel to the guided busway, but it needs to answer some of the other questions, including that access. And I think there are also reports coming up to area committees in the autumn about the study that the County Council's done of access, other ways of crossing the rail at that point.
Yes.
So, yes, it would be nice to think that the problems of Cambridge railway station could be solved by creating an east side to it, but it might take a while.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Mr. Banco, do you want to ask your question as well?
Yeah.
Which follows up from the contribution from Robin Pellew at the meeting of the Assembly and further discussions, I understand.
That's right, yes. I'm speaking as the trustee of Cambridge Past, Present and Future, who are the custodians of the Leper Chapel, and the Leper Chapel is on the prospective route for the Chisholm Trail. Cambridge PPF would like to reiterate its strong support for the Chisholm Trail, and we also welcome the proposal that the Leper Chapel becomes a focus for it, and appreciate that the trail properly routed will improve the visibility and the accessibility of the chapel. Furthermore, we support the plans for a cafe and a public car park on the south side of the Newmarket Road. We met again, as you said, Mr. Chairman, with the consultant John Grimshaw of the Leper Chapel on the 23rd of July, and both Cambridge PPF and Mr. Grimshaw agree that the original preferred route, with the underpass opening directly in front of the chapel, is unacceptable and should be withdrawn from consideration. We understand, in fact I think now we've seen confirmation, that Mr. Grimshaw has submitted an alternative plan to the County Council that moves the underpass further to the east along the Newmarket Road. This is a significant and much welcomed improvement. Assuming that this new route is accepted by you, the board, we believe it provides a more acceptable basis for consultation, and we've already made a number of further detailed comments to Mr. Grimshaw. However, as custodians of this Grade 1 listed site, we still believe that the nearer the underpass is moved towards Coldham Brook, the less impact there will be on the chapel, and thus the more acceptable the route will be. We're told that it's not possible to locate the route any closer to the brook than the new location proposed by Mr. Grimshaw for drainage reasons. We aren't experts, but we do question this. There are subways constructed below the groundwater table that don't flood, both elsewhere in Cambridge and certainly in other cities. Holland, I imagine, would be chock-a-block if that were the case. Clearly, this is more a matter of cost than of engineering, and this raises the question of how much it is worth to protect the setting of Cambridge's oldest entire building. Cambridge PPF is working with the City Council to carry out a heritage survey of the chapel curtilage and an ecological survey of the chapel meadow. Common sense, we suggest, would dictate that the best route can be decided only when these surveys have been completed in the spring of next year. Until this information is available, whilst reiterating our support for the trail, we believe that we all need to keep our options open on the final optimal route.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Blanco. I'm pleased that we've made some progress on the issue in between the two meetings.
Yes.
I think obviously we've got the item on our agenda, but the proposal would be, as you mentioned in your question, to consult on the revised route that has been discussed with you, but to keep the options open.
Thank you.
I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Mr. Hughes.
No, Chairman, just briefly, as you say, I mean, I think good progress has been made, and a number of conversations have taken place, and that's been very useful. There's always a balance. I mean, you talk about cost and you talk about engineering issues. There is always a balance. I mean, most things, one way or another, can be engineered, but ultimately there does have to be a balance to be considered. So what we would want to do is to continue to talk with Cambridge PPF. We're very keen to reach an agreement that suits everybody. And so, subject to the board's decision today, we hope we can actually commence a consultation process, but as with all of these schemes, that's only the start rather than the end of the process, and we want to continue talking if the board approves the scheme for consultation, continue to talk to Cambridge PPF to try and resolve the outstanding issues as we take that forward. So I think we've, between us all, established a very constructive dialogue and have moved between us quite a long way already, so we hope that can continue.
Yeah, I think that's right. We look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you for your input, and the commitment is there that there's a continued discussion during the period of the consultation whilst going out to consultation, at least on the proposed route.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Blencoe. And fourth, we have Roxanne de Bow from the Cambridge Cycling Campaign. Hi.
Hi. Thank you. I'm the Cycling Campaign Officer for the Cambridge Cycling Campaign, speaking on behalf of the campaign. On behalf of the Cambridge Cycling Campaign, I would like to express our support for the proposed consultation for the cross-city cycle routes and for the Chisholm Trail. Improving infrastructure for people to cycle into and around Cambridge will have numerous benefits at an individual, community and business level. Research has shown that employees choose companies based on their ability to cycle to work. People choose where to live based on their ability to cycle for their travel needs. People who cycle are more productive at work. People who cycle spend more money in the local economy. Societies where people cycle benefit from reduced congestion and reduced air pollution. And members of the millennial generation are less likely to own a car or desire ownership of a car. Cross-city cycle routes are just one part of making a transport system that can support growth. We look forward to seeing the details of these plans and working with the councils and their consultants to ensure the improvements can best meet the needs of cyclists and other road users. We strongly believe that the focus of cycling investment in the coming years must be on improving the radial roads in Cambridge and the inner ring road. These are extremely poor for cycling, but housing growth means there is no space to expand routes along slower green areas. Areas like Newmarket Road desperately need a complete redesign and would like the City Deal to perhaps be more ambitious in proposing some improvements here in the coming years. We also urge the City Deal to apply further consideration to the roundabout at Fen Causeway and Lensfield Road. While we are aware of the plans to make improvements here, we ask the City Deal to perhaps consider more ambitious and effective solutions for one of the worst intersections in Cambridge. The City Deal is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and we urge the City Deal Board to be bold in their plans so that the infrastructure of this city can be as world-leading as the technology and discoveries that our city is known for. The Cycling Campaign and other groups are working together to make suggestions about how this can be achieved, and we hope to share these with you in the coming months. But I'd just like to reiterate, we're very happy to see these coming to consultation, and we'll be hoping to partner with you and make them very successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. In terms of just an initial response to that, overall, I think, as you'll see from the agenda, that there is a significant area of common agreement on some of the solutions that need to be progressed. So we welcome what you said about continuing to work on them, because there's quite a lot of detail to be worked through, particularly on some of those on-road cycling improvements. I guess what we would say is that in terms of the research statement, there's ways of putting that section, the bullet points. Research does show these things, but it's not like 100%. It's just that there's an increase in the benefits there. In terms of Newmarket Road, as you'll hear from the board quite often, if we'd had the 500 million in one go, then we would have had a programme for Newmarket Road. But I think, in my calculation, if I recall right, Mr. Hughes, the total for that was approaching £100 million. So there is a firm commitment to improve Newmarket Road. I think the issue for us was that within the options of committing the first £100 million, in simplistic terms, we could have either done Newmarket Road in the first 5 years, or we could do a basket of other projects. So the commitment is there to Newmarket Road. Fen Causeway and Lensfield Road, it is an intractable roundabout, and I think we can take away the principle that we will continue to look at that. But as you'll be aware, the road space on that double roundabout is so restrictive that despite efforts, the County Council hasn't come up with proposals in the last 20 years that have been able to come up with a significant improvement. Yeah, but we welcome working with you, and clearly there is a lot more to be done, and then when we look at some of the other projects on the city centre and on the radial routes, there will be other discussions to be had about how to make the city a better place for cyclists.
Look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Victoria Wallace is also speaking on the Chisholm Trail. Sorry, Sophie Hyde, it's been forwarded, sorry. Sorry, Sophie. So, Sophie Hyde from Friends of Ditton Meadows.
So good afternoon. My question is the board happy with the route of the Chisholm Trail at the point where it crosses the river? Now I understand that of course the bridge isn't part of your remit, but of course the trail does start and stop here this side of the river. As a group, we're a small group I will say, but we haven't got funds and resources that some of the other groups here have. But we are nonetheless passionate about it. We're concerned that, firstly, a 6 metre wide cycleway across Ditton Meadows, regardless of how close it is to the railway, is going to cause irreversible damage to the areas, and also could leave it vulnerable, and I know this isn't the board's intention, but could leave it vulnerable to be used by motorised traffic in future generations. Secondly, we're concerned that the current usage modelling, the usage modelling that's out there at the moment, on which the proposal is based, is too broad. I know there's some work underway to revise this, but I'd urge the board to wait for the results of this before we push ahead to further consultation and planning. Thirdly, as far as we can tell, full consideration doesn't seem to have been given to alternative routes for crossing the river. We've been asking to certainly the Cambridge Cycle Campaign to see other routes for crossing that have been considered and ruled out, and those haven't been forthcoming. So we'd like to see alternative routes that might better serve the overall transport needs of our city. And of course there are some fundamental flaws in the current river crossing point, and particularly that pinch point under the railway. So fourthly, our fourth concern is that the proposed mitigations, such as the tunnel under the railway line, which I think may have been removed from current proposals but certainly was there a couple of weeks ago, haven't been costed. So this scheme could risk absolutely hemorrhaging public money that could be spent on other things. So before passing the scheme for consultation or for planning, we urge the board to invest a little bit more time and resource in considering alternative routes, such as maybe upgrades to the Green Dragon Bridge or the Riverside Bridge, that may serve our cities' needs better without the impact on Ditton Meadows. And if we can do that, we could perhaps avoid the Green Dragon Bridge being followed by a White Elephant Bridge.
Thank you, Sophie. For reasons beyond our control, we've only just seen your question and you've added several more. What I propose is that Mr. Hughes, if you write to me, then we'll give you a full answer. I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of the options issue, because that's probably the most pertinent issue in terms of the routing that we're going out to consultation on. But clearly there's been quite a lot of separate work before the board was established to look at tackling transport issues, including this cycle proposal.
Yes, so, thank you, Chairman. Through you, I think essentially, the stage we're at is on this route as a whole, a relatively early stage. So we have a proposal before the board today, which, if the board approves it, will be subject to a consultation. So, in a way, many of the points you've raised can all be fed into that process. Clearly, we're familiar with a lot of the issues that have been raised in relation to the consultations on the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, and so they're not generally new concerns. They're ones that we're aware of and have sought to address wherever possible. So I think on the general issue, if the consultation is approved, and the timetable will be no doubt talked about later as we go through the paper, that's a better opportunity, if you like, to formally make the views known. As Councillor Herbert said, though, if you wish to write in, we can address at this point in time, but clearly we don't have a final route at the moment. We don't have a final scheme, because that will come out of, subject to today's decision, the consultation and the processes that follow thereafter.
Just on one point, I mean, there's no intention and no plan that this route or the part of the Chisholm Trail will be used for motorised transport. So any discussion on that would be a wholly separate and major issue, and I've got no knowledge of any suggestion that would be appropriate, and indeed people would be very quick to champion opposing that, including a number of councillors. So I mean, we're here to discuss that. If you want to drop me an email, then I will respond, assisted by Graham, because obviously there is quite a history to that element that's in the route. But we'll take the item when we come to it. But thank you for coming.
Thank you.